Big time action at featherweight, Matt. We have the UFC debut of Luis Saldana, who's going to be taking on Jordan Griffin. And it's an interesting one for Luis Saldana, a guy coming in here at 30. He started his pro career 10 years ago, grinded away in the minor leagues. He's got an overall record of 14-6. He's like the Yermin Mercedes of MMA. And listen, the hit streak couldn't continue for Mercedes, but it could for Saldana in this fight. He's got a really interesting one ahead of him. And if you look at his overall body of work, all of those 14 wins are by finish. That's absolutely insane. 6 by knockout, 8 by submission. A guy coming at us from Fight Ready MMA in Arizona. And we've talked about Fight Ready before, and we're going to talk about Fight Ready even more with Santino DeFranco, and he's training with Kamuela Kirk, and I think that's really going to help him in a fight like this. Take on a guy in Jordan Griffin out of Rufus Sport that's kind of been there and done that. And if you look at his overall body of work, he's had 4 more pro fights. He's a year older in his career. But you look at Jordan Griffin's overall body of work before he came into the UFC, and it's a lot of recognizable names. I mean, he's got a loss to Dan Moret, a loss to Bellator champ Juan Archuleta. And then when he came up, I mean, a win over Derek Minner by sub. That win just keeps looking better. Impressive. And in the UFC, he makes his debut against Dan Ige, loses, fights Chaz Skelly, loses, beats TJ Brown in a super emotional win, and then he loses Yusuf Zalal in kind of a, it was what it was. Yeah. But he lost that fight, his second of 2020. He was originally supposed to rematch with Derek Minner. Minner missed weight, so he had to wait a week or two to get the fight against Yusuf Zalal. But you have a fight here where Jordan Griffin always fights pretty well the same. He strikes the clinch, he clinched to get the takedown, and then he wants to get the submission. For Luis Saldana, he can definitely get the submission. Again, 8 of his overall 14 wins by submission. His overall level of competition, not as high as that of a Jordan Griffin. I mean, we're talking losses to Mike Santiago. Yes, that guy that fought in the UFC that time back in 2016. But if you look at the recent win streak for Luis Saldana, 4 in a row, he had that Carl Wittstock win that looks great from LFA 60, took some time off, and then fought Vince Murdoch on Contender Series. And it was a weird one because Murdoch was a guy, he already had a contract, he was supposed to fight in the UFC. Do you know he's supposed to fight in the UFC?
Who?
Jordan Griffin. He was supposed to fight Jordan Griffin in Milwaukee. It didn't happen. Murdoch had that weird health scare, and then these guys fought. And Luis Saldana bodied him up and pieced him up and finished him with an insane front kick and then just pounded away. While he basically was sitting on his face. I wish I never said that on this channel, but I did. And then he just hammered away in his face. Luis Saldana, triple threat. Love the fight. This is a good one.
I don't really know where to go from there, to be honest. Jordan Griffin never fights the way I think he's going to fight, even though I know how he's going to fight every time he fights. I understand that doesn't make any sense, but I look at Craig's face, and he understands what I'm trying to get across. Jordan Griffin, when his stance makes him look like he is some Henry Cejudo, Wonderboy Thompson-esque fighter, and he doesn't have terrible stand-up. The point is, he doesn't use it, and that's the weird thing about Jordan Griffin. I actually think if he used his stand-up more, and here's the thing. Normally with grapplers, I'm very against it. I say just get really good at wrestling, learn how to choke people out, and never strike. But Jordan Griffin, his movement's not bad on the feet. He does have fairly good striking, but everything he does in his game is to get away from the striking, and I will never understand why. Because when he does close the distance, he is fighting a lot of guys who they have the wrestling base that he doesn't have. Where Jordan Griffin, we know him for his submissions, we know him for his jiu-jitsu. If he did just become more of that, I'm a really good striker, if I drop you, I'll go for the submission. But Jordan Griffin just gets tired going for takedowns, and I don't get it. It's a really frustrating thing because now, I can also say this. Every time I think Jordan Griffin's going to win, he doesn't. Every time I think he's going to lose, it turns out he's going to win. So I might sound a little salty here, but with Griffin, I just don't really know what I'm going to get out of him in this fight. And you mentioned how emotional he was after the Brown win. He went on to say, oh, well, if I lost this one, that was going to be it for my UFC career. And I feel like he is in a very similar position going into this fight. So if you are Jordan Griffin and you're like, okay, when the lights shine brightest, I'm going to show up. Like, if I lose this, I'm out of the UFC. This is the fight you have to show up for. And against Luis Saldana, you are going to have that opportunity on the ground. And you bring up how 8 of his 14 wins are by submission. I actually don't think Saldana can submit Griffin. I think he can drop him, and I think he could control him on the ground, but I do think he's going to have a very hard time on the mat with Jordan Griffin. And the best path to victory for Saldana would be to keep it on the feet, even though I've just spent the last minute and a half telling you I wish Jordan Griffin struck more. It's just a really odd fight for both guys because they are kind of the yin and yang of the other one. Can Jordan Griffin strike? I actually think he's pretty good at it. He just decides not to. He's great on the mat, though. And with Saldana, a lot of his submissions do come from, I'm going to hurt my opponent on the feet. Then once it's on the mat, I've got great scrambles, great submissions. The thing that does worry me with Saldana is that he will just jump for a submission. You had mentioned earlier, position over submission. Saldana isn't always like that. And I always bring up the case about when Gilbert Burns was in Tyron Woodley's full mount and he jumped to a triangle a little bit too early. If you're really good on the ground, like a Gilbert Burns level player, you can get away with some of those mistakes. But if you're Saldana and you do try to jump on an arm, go for any position that might end with Jordan Griffin on top. That's a very risky proposition for this fight.
To me, I mean, I look at it, you got Jordan Griffin out of Rufus Sport. You talk about the level of opponent or the level of training partner there, the Pettis brothers, and so on and so forth. Felder, we've seen great fighters come out of there. Maybe if you mix it up a little bit with like VFS Academy. I mean, we have Ignacio Bahamondes on this card as well as Bilal Muhammad, but maybe if you mix it up with some more of the strikers, you never know what you could get out of Jordan Griffin. You're right. I agree with you. And I mean, if you look at Griffin, out of his overall 18 wins, 9 of them by submission. But for him, he can lock it up at any point. For TJ Brown, he got a little sloppy, a little tired, and Griffin was right there to submit and did a great job in that one. For Luis Saldana, I mean, I had it in my notes. You can work behind the jab. He can throw a lot of really good kicks. If he throws his outside kick, he usually follows it up with a hook. He throws very well in combination. The weird thing with him, though, he's a plodding type of striker, and he can kind of get a little flat-footed. If he takes on somebody that has a really nice low kick, it would be a big issue for Luis Saldana. I don't know if we're going to get that out of Jordan Griffin in this fight, so it'll be interesting to see. Both guys, you would think for Luis Saldana, he's usually the tallest fighter in the cage when he fights. For Jordan Griffin, he's also usually the tallest fighter when he steps into the cage. If you have a look at it, I mean, both guys, 5'11", 5'10", the reach, incredible for this division. So two of the bigger guys that you're going to see here. It'll be interesting to see if Griffin can kind of bring in his perceived grappling, advantage in a fight like this against a guy like Saldana. Because you have to expect, if you watch Saldana's last fight, and then you go back a little bit further, his striking continues to progress. And if he's a submission over position guy, that really plays into the hand of Jordan Griffin.
It does. Stylistically, this fight just really is interesting because Griffin does a lot of things that can kind of go against him in a certain way. If he goes into the clinch a lot, I can expect him to walk into a big shot from Saldana, and that's going to be the issue. If Griffin was the one who could stay behind his jab, could be dedicated to some of those probing shots on the outside, I would like him a lot more. My issue is, for Jordan Griffin to have success, he's going to have to be reacting to the pressure that Saldana brings to him. So if you're constantly reacting to what your opponent's doing, A, you're going to fatigue faster, and B, you're always going to be that half step behind. So I think, A, whoever's moving forward will probably win this fight. I just think Luis is going to be the one moving forward.
So, Matt, if we talk about the odds in this one, Saldana opened a minus 135 favorite. He's now minus 143. Slight change in favor of Saldana. For Jordan Griffin, opened a plus 115. He's now about a plus 117. And if we have a look at Tapology, it's a surprise to me as it is to you. 993 total votes. 74% Saldana, 74% by decision. The experience lies in the corner of Jordan Griffin. There's a lot of people that like to go with experience in a fight like this. For Saldana, again, fight ready, the Cejudo connection. He's a guy that came in on Dana White's Contender Series last summer. It was season 4, week 8. And on that season, we had a lot of UFC fighters. Jared Van Der fought Harry Hunsucker. Bet you never thought Harry'd be a UFC fighter, but he is. You also had Ignacio Bahamondes on that episode, as well as Carlos Ulberg. Now, Matt, out of those fighters, well, 3 out of the 4 I just named have lost in the UFC. So, Ignacio, let's see what you're made of this weekend. It's going to be a very interesting fight. What's the pick here?
I'm going to slightly edge Luis Saldana in this fight. I'm not going to switch my pick. I will stick with it throughout the week. But this is a really hard one to pick because I do think if Griffin could get on top of Saldana and really make him work, he's going to be able to fatigue him quite a bit to where maybe Griffin will be able to get a takedown of his own as the fight goes on. But for me, I do think Saldana, he's the much more heavy-handed striker out of the two. Do I think Saldana could beat TJ Brown? Yes, I do. Do I think he could also lose to Dan Ige and Yusuf Zalal? Yeah, I do. So I do think this is a very well matched up fight between these two, and I do think it will result in a very fun fight. But yeah, picking Saldana in this.
For Jordan Griffin, if you have a look at it, all 3 of his losses, he lost 29-28. All of them. All the judges every time. He won a round against Dan Ige. Against Chaz Skelly, he also won a round in his last fight. I like that. I mean, I love that level of competition for Jordan Griffin. The thing about Saldana, he's been in the game for 10 years. He's got a great gym. Could I see him walking in there and getting like a highlight reel knockout of Jordan Griffin? Sure. But I feel like, again, the quality of training partner that Griffin has at Rufus Sport really going to mitigate some of those issues. The striking defense, not the biggest of concern. The way to beat Jordan Griffin you got to kind of grind on him and not let him get those submissions. And it's a really tough ask for anybody.
If Chaz Skelly can out-grapple you, though, you're not in that elite of elite grapplers. And that's my problem with Jordan Griffin. I think he's a good grappler, but he's in my mind. I always bring this up. I never say this on the show, but it's just something I always think about. OSP isn't a black belt level grappler, but when he gets you in a Von Flue, that's his black belt level position, if you will. With Griffin, he's got the guillotine. He has some positions, but sometimes his overall grappling game, he can get swept if he's on top. He will have some lapses defensively on the ground. So for that reason, that's why I can't be 100% on Jordan Griffin, but I really can't disagree with your pick.
Matt, you're going with Luis Saldana to win his UFC debut. I'm going to be going with Rufus Sports. Jordan Griffin to get the win. Really looking forward to this fight. We got 15 total on the card, including a great main event between the Trailblazer and King's MMA's Marvin Vettori. So really looking forward to it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt. As we always say, let's get into it.